Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wrestling Academy, a podcast all about wrestling history with no linear timeline or trackable syllabus. So if you're a lifelong fan or you're brand new, this is the podcast for you. I am your headmaster. My name is Michael Classic.
And my name is Samee Junio, your Homecoming King here at Wrestling Academy. If you're watching us on YouTube, thanks. Are you following us yet? If you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, hop on over to YouTube and follow us there, because after we get 1,000 followers on YouTube, I will put Michael violently through a table.
And after the matches we checked out this week, I think they are generous with the tables, and I think it really got Samee in the giving spirit, and they really want to pass that love of putting people through tables on to me. So if you could get to YouTube and hit subscribe, we would really appreciate it. But Samee,
yes,
this is actually huge, because in addition to trying to get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, we are actually trying to crack kind of a cold case here, because in our Royal Rumble episode, we found a mysterious figure in the background of pretty much every shot of Royal Rumble 2008. All we know about this person for sure is they are wearing a yellow t-shirt from the band VIII, and we have started an exhaustive nationwide, worldwide search trying to figure out who is VIII Kid. We've set up an anonymous tip line, so if you have any tips or clues, please call us at 708-669-4512. Again, that is 708-669-4512 for the anonymous VIII Kid tip line. You don't even have to give your name. I actually have a little bit of an update today, because normally we've been searching, and it just felt like maybe the trail had gone cold, but I did a little bit of digging, and I think I might have finally gotten us a clue that's going to move things forward.
Let's go.
I'm really excited about this. So here's the thing. Here's what I was thinking, right? We are looking for, I'm going to flash the picture up on the screen. This is VIII Kid. This is who we're looking for. Gorgeous. Incredible, impeccable t-shirt selection. We know this. But here's what I realized.
Yeah.
I've been hunting, looking for this picture, but this isn't who we're looking for. No. This person lives in 2008. Samee, it's not 2008 anymore. So we need an updated picture on who VIII Kid is.
Oh, no.
So I devoted a lot of resources. I taught myself some complicated programming to run a digital scan so we can get an updated current day depiction of who VIII Kid is. And Samee, I'm really excited to share with you what I came up with. Are you ready?
I am so ready.
All right, I pulled it up. This is the most sophisticated program known to man. Let's digitize VIII Kid. This is the accurate, up-to-date version of what VIII Kid looks like. I know a lot of people might think that just looks like the same picture of VIII Kid with a wizard with a wizard beard shittily photoshopped on top of it. No. That is technology. I have harnessed future technology. I embrace technology, and I welcome technology. And if I can get AI in the mix, maybe I'll ask ChatGPT, who's VIII Kid? You know what I mean? I'm not afraid of using technology to try to find out who VIII Kid is. So this is the new VIII Kid. This is who we're looking for.
This is 2024 VIII Kid.
Yeah, this is the most cutting edge, up to date picture we have of VIII Kid. So if you've seen this person, please let us know. And if you have any tips on who VIII Kid is, please hit us up on any of our socials. Hashtag who is VIII Kid. You can go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, where we have our anonymous VIII Kid tip line. Again, that number is 708-669-4512.
If you also possess the time and resources that Michael had to generate this photo, and you want to generate an aged up photo of VIII Kid as well, and you want to show us, email that wrestlingacademypod@gmail.com, because we'd love to see if you get the same results as Michael.
Yeah, so run it through technology. That's where the search is now. We need updated, accurate photos of VIII Kid. This is the one I was able to make. Really proud of it. Took longer than you think. To make it. But Samee,
Yeah, Michael.
all that stuff. That's the future. What are we talking about today?
Today, we're talking about the rivalry between Kevin Steen and El Generico at Ring of Honor.
That's right. We're gonna jump into a brand new promotion today. You know, we've done so many other different places, and I mean, you might know Kevin Steen and El Generico by their WWE names because they're big stars in WWE now. So Kevin Steen is Kevin Owens, and then El Generico is Sami Zayn. So before they were Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, they were Kevin Steen and El Generico in all of the independents. But the story we're going to be talking about primarily takes place in Ring of Honor, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
I'm very excited to talk about it too. So, we will break down their gimmicks and in ring style back when they were at Ring of Honor within the body of this episode. But can you kind of tell us who these guys are now at WWE?
Sure. So I think Sami Zayn has gone through a bunch of different iterations, but I think currently, I think for my money, I think Sami Zayn is one of the best good guy baby faces that I've ever seen. I think his connection with a crowd, his ability to get you on board and make you believe in what he's doing is unlike anybody I've he's in a rare class of people who are able to do that effectively and reliably and get the audience to care. Whereas I think Kevin Owens is almost the exact opposite in a lot of ways, where it's like he is just such a natural bully bad guy whose whole character is just being so world weary and over it that I think it's pretty endearing. Like he really is like an everyman, salt of the earth kind of a guy, and his whole deal is he's kind of a prize fighter, so everything he does is for his family, and so he's willing to screw people over, he's willing to cut corners, he's willing to cheat, he's willing to do whatever he needs to do so that he can get the money to support his family. And that's always kind of been in the Kevin Owens character, whereas I think Sami Zayn just believes in doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. I mean, granted, he's been a bad guy too, but generally what I know Sami Zayn as is being just a passionate, heartfelt, good guy, underdog who I'm always rooting for whenever I see him.
Yeah, that was really interesting to see that, like, even in the beginning, even in his early matches, Sami Zayn had the audience behind him like the whole time. I think that's really interesting and kind of cool.
I think so too. And I guess what I want to say is, so that's the modern day. That's Kevin Owens, that's Sami Zayn. But before that, they were the wrestlers Kevin Steen and El Generico. And so I would say Kevin Steen and Kevin Owens, very similar. I think Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen is very good at playing that character and has been working that specific kind of character, you know, where it just sort of seems like an elevated version of himself. Whereas Sami Zayn, when he was El Generico, was almost a completely different dude. So El Generico, the whole gimmick there is that he's a generic masked wrestler, which is sort of a satirical thing that would happen in a lot of promotions where they would just get a random luchador under a mask and no one would be able, they didn't really have a backstory or anything like that. It was just sort of an exciting masked wrestler. And so they just brought that trope to life with El Generico. And that's who Sami Zayn was under the mask. And so he became so popular playing this generic faceless luchador that the character went on to then become super popular and people went out of their way to see El Generico. That's the beginning of it. So the El Generico character he's a masked luchador who doesn't really talk a ton. And that's kind of his whole thing. So there's like a whole invented backstory for the El Generico character. But all you need to keep in mind for this feud is it's like he's a masked luchador who, well, we'll find out how he becomes affiliated with Kevin Steen pretty quick.
I also love that in the research of these two guys, well, El Generico specifically, the kind of vibe is that everybody doesn't want to admit that Sammy is El Generico. And so that's like it's a very fun little game that we all get to play with each other.
I don't know. It sort of reminds me of when people work at Disney, and I guess they're not allowed to say that they play one of the mascot characters. So they're like, oh, I'm not Goofy. I'm friends with Goofy. And for whatever reason, that keeps the magic alive. So it really does feel like Sami Zayn does a very similar dance with El Generico, where he's like, "Oh no, I'm not El. I've heard about him. He sounds great, but I'm not. That's not me."
Yeah, and one of the breakdowns is like, oh yeah, so El Generico went back to Tijuana with the orphans to open up an orphanage, and then Sami Zayn, his most prized mentee, shows up at WWE. It's like, okay, guys, this is real fun. This is real fun.
I've always found it so funny, and it's great, and it's also really makes me happy because I think fans love to play along with it. So whenever they talk about El Generico and Sami Zayn, there'll always be some kind of clarification of just like, and then around that time, a brand new wrestler who had nothing to do with anything, Sami Zayn, showed up in NXT, and I don't know. I always just find it funny. I think it's great.
Oh gosh, I also have to admit that I fell for a dumb trick here. So I fell into a thread where the post was, if you translate Sami Zayn into Arabic and then take that translation into English and then translate that back into Arabic, you get El Generico. And I actually tried to get these results for like 4 to 5 minutes. And then, I got like rickrolled gently in the back of my head, like, never gonna give you up. I was like, all right, I see what happened here.
So much like me going deep into the night, trying to develop new aging technology to try to catch Ween Kid, you were putting in the hard labor of trying to translate Sami Zayn's name to
You're
see if you could find any connection between Sami Zayn and El Generico.
or really just spending 5 minutes furiously clicking those little 2 arrows on Google Translate, and it's just like Sami Zayn, Sami Zayn, Sami Zayn, Sami Zayn. Really feeling foolish. Really feeling foolish. But let's move on to the bios of both of these wrestlers. We're dealing with 2 Canadian legends, Kevin Steen and Rami Sebai. Kevin got his start in wrestling 2 years before Rami, so I will start with Kevin first. Kevin started training in 1998 and debuted in ring on May 7th, 2000, his 16th birthday. Michael, do you remember what you were doing when you were 16?
My sister got a PlayStation, and she somehow made the rule with my parents that I was not allowed to play the PlayStation unless she was there too. And so she got Grand Theft Auto, but was popular and on sports teams. And so she was never home. And so she would never play the game. So at 16 years old, I was sneaking into her room to steal her copy of Grand Theft Auto so that I could then sneak down into the TV room and play it for 25 minutes exactly, and then save it so my sister wouldn't catch me.
I love that. I love that for you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
25 minutes. That's
sharing.
all I had before she came home from track practice.
That reminds me of when my brother got his PlayStation, definitely like long before I turned 16, but he was playing through Final Fantasy VII, but we didn't have memory cards back then, and we
Mhm.
definitely couldn't be playing video games when my parents weren't home. So my brother would play for like 1 to 2 hours before my mom came home from work, and then had to turn it off, and he did this over and over and over again, and I remember the specific spot where he'd always have to turn it off is when they run into Red 13 for the first time, for any of you Final Fantasy VII nerds. Anyways, so while Michael was playing Grand Theft Auto for 25 minutes at a time, Kevin was training at Rougeau's wrestling school with Jacques Rougeau, who is WWE's The Mountie, and Kevin was Jacques' golden boy for 3 years at his wrestling school. Kevin leaving Rougeau's side in 2003 has a little bit to do with Rami, so let's add his bio into the mix. Rami Sebai made his debut in 2002 as Stevie McFly while training with Jerry Tuit and Savio Vega at Fédération de Lutte Québécoise, FLC, and a few months after that, he debuted as El Generico at a promotion called International Wrestling Syndicate, or IWS. Right, and you found kind of the the source or the origin story of El Generico, right?
Yeah. So on Fightful, I found there was an interview where they were talking to one of the people who ran IWS. And so it's like I found this quote from a guy named Crazy Manny where he basically talked about the origins of where the El Generico character came from. So I'll just read it. This is via Fightful. So Samee was literally one of my neighbors growing up. He lived a street away from me. He started coming to IWS shows as a broom boy. He would sweep up the ring and sneak in early and would be practicing early and taking bumps. One day, TNT, his opponent didn't show up, and he was like, "Give me the kid." We put an octagon mask on Samee. The El Generico mask is actually an octagon mask. We put an octagon mask on him that somebody had backstage. We named him El Generico, the generic luchador. He went out there and had his first match. I'll never forget. He did a super corkscrew moonsault to the outside of the ring and landed it. And he just went, "Ole," because he didn't know what to say, and the crowd went insane and started ole, 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 and it just took off.
So there's some story here now with IWS and Kevin and Rami. Basically, Rougeau ran an exceedingly tight ship at his wrestling school. It was very regimented, incredibly planned, and all the matches were super tight, and there was no room for the wrestlers to improvise or tweak anything. And they also weren't allowed to talk to each other inside of the ring. So I'm assuming what it would look like was just a very clean, accurate match. But the wrestlers had to do this over and over and over again for months, which, I feel like really takes the spirit out of wrestling.
I've definitely heard reports or behind the scenes thing of big wrestlers like Macho Man, Randy Savage, who everything was very choreographed, everything was very scripted. So even for big matches, me personally, I'm thinking once you get that match in front of a crowd, it becomes like acting, I would assume, where
Yeah.
you're playing off the energy. So to just do the prescripted beats that I know I'm sure they have in their bones at that point. But yeah, it just seems like it would all kind of go out the window once you start seeing how everybody's reacting. So it does seem like it would be a little bit difficult if you're this hungry upstart wrestler just to be like, cool, stick to the choreography, just do the beats back to back to back to back.
What's interesting is that, as I mentioned, Kevin was Rougeau's golden boy. So Kevin was booked to never lose. So he was just always winning these robotic matches, which is cool and then not cool. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess Samee, would you want to be the most popular nerd?
Yikes. I think I may have been already.
Oh no.
Shit.
I was more of a bad boy nerd myself.
Oh, wow. The baddest nerd in town.
Yeah, just a nerd with no social skills and a fucking anger problem.
And a bad dude.
Yeah, everybody's favorite, just a nerd who's a dick.
Oh, I'm so happy for us. I'm glad we grew out of it. So that was Rougeau and his school. And to put IWS in perspective, they had matches called Fans Bring the Weapons.
So a Fans Bring the Weapons, I would assume, is a hardcore match where we, the audience, can bring weapons for them to use. You've been to a lot of wrestling shows. You've been to a lot of wrestling shows at this point. You've been to a lot of hardcore shows at this point. If a promotion you really liked had a Fans Bring the Weapons match, knowing everything you know, all your studies in wrestling academy, all your live experience, what kind of weapon would you bring to a Fans Bring the Weapons match?
Oh my gosh. Can I ask you what yours is while I think?
It's a lemon, dude.
You fucking bad attitude nerd. Tell us why a lemon.
Because here's the thing, dude. Wouldn't it be so fucked up if somebody gets cut or you just get somebody to hold and then you squeeze the lemon into their eye or their cut, and then you could have the like you know what I mean? It just like adds to the intensity, and I do think it would be a level of violence that would really make people wince. And also, if you just like fully didn't even cut it open and you just fully like a rock through a lemon at somebody to hit him in the face, I just think that's a funny visual.
That's a great visual.
Yellow, it's a great color, easy to keep track of. But then I do think it's like when they started doing, instead of thumbtacks, they would do Legos. So they would just pour a bag of Legos on the ground. And the rationale was stepping on thumbtacks. You kind of know what that feels like, but stepping on a Lego, we all know what that feels like. And so there's a relatability to it. And so part of me feels like getting lemon juice in the mix really would, I think really would, if you're watching a hardcore match, be like, these guys are insane.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. That's a good one, Michael.
Yeah, what about you? What would you bring?
So 2 of them pop up for me.
Great.
One is a callback to our Terry Funk episode where I talked about how I would dress up a hardcore match weapon by rigging a chainsaw to a music box because I think that that's so fucked up. And the second would be like a really like a blown up photo of like everyone's family.
Like a cardboard cutout? What are you talking about?
like a framed, like a nice ornate framed photo of everybody's family to see what they would do. I don't know.
I'm just putting myself in the perspective. I'm a wrestler. I'm gonna do this fun match for the fans where I'm like, you know what? You guys bring whatever weapons you want, and we'll use them in the match. And then I show up, and you have a fucking picture of my family, and you're like, use this, fight them with this. I would be scared. I would truly be so scared.
I think that's it. Or like, I guess I forgot that it's from a fan's perspective. I kind of thought that like these ornate family photos would like be covered by blankets and put in like the corners of the ring.
Oh, that's
and then
what Sammy the wrestler would bring.
Yeah,
to the match.
Yeah. As a fan, I would bring the chainsaw music box.
That's worse. That's way worse.
And put them together, and that's where my mental state is today.
Yeah. Man, you got all over me for the lemon. I think the lemon works. I think the lemon plays. Chainsaw music box, give me a break.
Okay, so IWS, we have fans bring the weapons. Rougeau's school is a little nutty, I think. And aside from making his students keep a real tight script, Jacques also had a pretty intense policy where his students were not allowed to go and watch other wrestling shows but put on by other promotions. They were truly forbidden. And so, of course, Kevin wanted to go see some fucking wrestling. So he did, and he went to see an IWS show, and he was so captivated by the matches and their freedom. And one wrestler in particular, El Generico. And Kevin yearned for the freedom to wrestle the way that the IWS folks were, and so he joined them in 2003. Now they're both at the same promotion. They make appearances at Jersey All Pro Wrestling, or JAPW, Combat Zone Wrestling, CZW, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, PWG, and Ring of Honor, ROH. And they finally end up in an official tag team at Ring of Honor in 2007.
I think in a lot of ways, Steen and Generico, it's a lot like our Lucha Bros episode, right? Where Pentagon and Phoenix are actual real life brothers who worked together, worked side by side a lot, and were able to then like become a tag team. And then that translated to some early success for them. Whereas I feel like Kevin Steen and El Generico are kind of the opposite, where it's like, oh, they worked together in such close proximity for so long, and they have the care and affection for each other that they're like siblings, you know what I mean? And I think so it's like sometimes tag teams could be actual siblings, and then sometimes it's like the chosen siblings that you find. And I think that that's where these two guys shine, because it's like their characters, their presentations are a little bit different, but what they have in common is their passion, their goal, their love for each other, and that's what makes a great team. And so it's one of those things where it's like when they were traveling the indies, going to all these different promotions, they were crossing paths side by side, working together a lot. But then when they join ROH and officially become a tag team, that's where things really seem to start to coalesce for them. So they've joined Ring of Honor, ROH. So to get into the birth of what ROH is, we need to dive into the high octane, fast paced world of pro wrestling video distribution. Before everything was digital, live stream, before you could watch WWE on Peacock and all the tape libraries existed, everything was pretty much just on videotapes. And there were companies whose whole job was to get those recorded all the shows were recorded onto tapes, and there was people who their whole job was to get those tapes and put them in video rental stores and just places you could buy them, magazines, like making sure we, the fans who had limited access to wrestling, could see these matches from like independent and regional promotions. So one of the biggest independent promotions in the game was Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW for short. They were huge for this like video distribution company, but then a thing happened in 2001. ECW, as we'll recall, went out of business and was absorbed by the WWE. And one of the things they got when they absorbed ECW was their entire tape library, meaning this company didn't have any tapes to sell. And so if they didn't have any tapes to sell, they were going to go out of business. And so they decided that what they would do is, if they couldn't find more tapes, they would make the tapes by starting their own wrestling promotion. And that is what Ring of Honor became.
Wow, I love this. They really went in business for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. They started their own business just to be like, the model of this business is we are going to make events that we can then film and then distribute with our distribution deal like we used to do for ECW.
Wow.
And that is how ROH was born. And so they ran their first event in Philadelphia, in, the home of ECW. They're paying a lot of homage to ECW and where it came from. But what I thought was interesting was, in a lot of ways, the initial presentation of ROH was kind of the exact opposite of ECW, because they wanted to get back to that style that we're very familiar with from New Japan Pro Wrestling, where it was a lot more honorable. Obviously, it's in the name, but it was like a lot more honorable. It was a lot more about the technical art, holds, submissions, strikes, that kind of thing, getting back to like the technical skill and the love of wrestling, as opposed to what was going on in other places like the WWE or TNA, where there would be a lot of the soap opera storytelling, the run-ins, the weapons, the cheating, the knocking out refs, all that kind of stuff. ROH wanted to differentiate themselves by being like, we are a promotion that is first and foremost about the art and craft, that like the craft of being a professional wrestler. So one of the ways they differentiated themselves from these other promotions is they developed a thing called the Honor Code. There are 5 rules that everybody was expected to follow. Number 1, you must shake hands before and after every match. 2, there's no outside interference. 3, there's no sneak attacks. 4, there's no harming officials. And 5, any action resulting in disqualification violates the code of honor. The main thing to keep in mind is, like, obviously this is part of the storyline. So people would violate these things all the time. And it was a way to show that obviously these were bad guys. They wouldn't shake hands. And that's how you knew that they were bad. But I think what started to develop is, as ROH became more popular, fans of ROH really believed in these rules, and they would appreciate them. So people got a lot more into, like in ROH, they would enjoy watching the technical craft of wrestling, and would really boo when people would do the outside interference or the ref bumps or the cheating or that kind of thing. So it's like, it really developed this appreciation. And I think ROH as a company, I think the code of honor has sort of evolved over the years. So it's like they don't follow it as strictly as they used to. And obviously when they developed it, it was just all kind of part of the storyline, ways for people to differentiate themselves, to be new and different and interesting kinds of bad guys. But I think generally the first 3 rules, the first 3 principles, are kind of what's adhered to in modern ROH. And I always find it really interesting that when I would just go and see an independent show, there would be a little bit of a different vibe and atmosphere whenever an ROH champion would come to PWG or would come to GCW. And they would be like, this match is for the Ring of Honor Championship. And I don't know, the way the ROH wrestlers carried themselves always felt a little bit like prep school Ivy League kids, where they would come in and insist on shaking hands. And it's just really, I don't know, it felt so Ivy League whenever I would watch it. And I always thought that was cool and interesting. And what I didn't know is that these rules were built into the foundation of the on-screen company. I thought that was cool. That was the beginning of ROH, but I think things really developed beyond that. So by the time we get to 2007, I think they were phasing out the honor code or revamping it. So people would follow, I think the main things were people would follow the first 3 precepts. that I laid out in the honor code. So shaking hands, no outside interference, no sneak attacks. So it was all very noble, very honorable. That New Japan presentation that we're sort of used to, where it's a lot more.
This is a fight sport and not.
Yeah, it's a lot more of a fight sport. Even though these wrestlers get wild too, we know we'll see.
Wet and wild, baby.
Wet and wild, baby. So that is what Kevin Steen and El Generico are walking into when they joined the company in 2007. And I think I just wanted to talk here about them specifically as a tag team, Kevin Steen and El Generico, because there's a couple of different tropes of tag teams that you'll encounter when you watch them. So there's the well-oiled machine kind of. There's the well-oiled machine. So when we've talked about tag teams like FTR or the Young Bucks, they fit that mold where they're able to just anticipate their need, like what the other one needs. But then there are these odd couple tag teams. It's kind of like when we covered Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page, where they're just kind of two guys, and the two guys are in a team. In a lot of ways, I feel like their tag team is like a buddy comedy, where the two guys are kind of night and day, but for whatever reason, they work together super well. So Generico, he's kind of a bubbly, goofball, good guy, babyface, whereas Kevin Steen is a lot more of a no-nonsense, almost sadistic at times, cocky, disrespectful, bad guy. And Generico, he doesn't really talk a lot. And Kevin Steen, what he's known for is his ability to cut promos and his ability to talk. So he is absolutely the mouthpiece of this. But I feel like what they have deep down that we've talked about is that found family aspect where these guys have been friends and they care about each other so much that the love they have for each other is what shines through. So even though their characters couldn't be any more different, I think when you see them together, you can feel that these two care about each other. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's what makes them so effective. But I think when you watch them, sometimes they wear matching outfits, but sometimes they don't. And sometimes sometimes they do teamwork, but sometimes they don't.
I feel like you've just been describing us for the past 2 minutes.
Yeah, sometimes, but it's also even in the match, Generico's more of a babyface. Steen's more of a heel. So they're not on the same page with even morally what they want in any given match. But the two of them together, it just works. One, because they're incredible wrestlers, but two, because they love each other. They care about each other. And that's real. That's a connection you can't fake. This lifelong connection that these two have had. And I found it very beautiful. With that in mind, this sort of oddball buddy comedy tag team joins ROH in 2007, and that is where our story begins. So before we dive in, I just want to give a shout out to Mythin, I think is their name. They broke down this entire feud on Substack, and it really helped me personally fill in a lot of details that I had been missing when I was putting this feud together. So we will link in our bio to their Substack, and it is like a 13-part exhaustive series where they go into even more depth than we will here. But I just want to shout out, thank you for doing the good work.
Yeah, it's really entertaining too. They've got a lot of
visual
photos
aids
and GIFs. Yeah, visual aids.
Yeah,
it's really entertaining.
Really great read. Where we start our story is Kevin Steen and El Generico have been working together in ROH for about 2 years. They had a hard-fought victory against the tag team, The Age of the Fall, which has Jimmy Jacobs and a young Tyler Black, aka Seth Rollins. They beat The Age of the Fall, and they finally become the tag team champions. But their victory is short-lived because they get into a bitter rivalry with a group called the American Wolves and end up losing their titles. And so when this story begins, for the past 7 months, Steen and Generico have been trying to work their way back into the title picture, but it just has not been going to plan. So by the time we get to December 19th, 2009, Final Battle, which is like a big event for ROH, but when we get to Final Battle 2009, it is Kevin Steen and El Generico fighting their longtime rivals, the Young Bucks.
Gasp.
So Samee, we watched Final Battle 2009. How did this match find you? What did you experience?
Kevin Steen was wrestling with a knee injury, and El Generico, I mean, he's just so over with the crowd. There's so much energy exchanged between the crowd and El Generico, especially because he's got an Ole, very easy to shout. He's pumping up the crowd, and so there's a real addictive energy to El Generico.
And I also feel like the Young Bucks, to a certain extent, have that energy too. So it is just 3 little wisps of lightning kind of scooting around the ring, and then there's just this dark storm cloud
Lumbering
in the
Kevin.
corner, and it's Kevin Steen. And, he's hurt, he's pissed off. He's always pissed off. He's hurt, and these losses have just been getting to him, and he's just, you can tell that his head is just not fully in the game. He hasn't fully locked in.
To me, El Generico kind of wrestles like a Saturday morning cartoon character, if that makes any sense. He has the prowess and moves, and his moveset is sophisticated, but he's also incredibly animated and exaggerated. Kevin, on the other hand, is intimidating and kind of stands and moves like a high school bully. At one point, Nick spits gum out, and Kevin picks it up and chews it.
This is so fucked up. Like that, this more than any of the violence that will happen in this match, this specific thing of Kevin Steen picking up the gum that just got spit in his face, hit the mat that people have been wrestling on all night. He scoops it up, pops it in his mouth, and starts chewing it, and then backs up and then spits it in Nick Jackson's face. So he goes from the guy who spit it, and he spits it in his brother's face. What a dick.
Unbelievable. But what this next thing that Kevin does made me actually sick. So he spits the gum out, and then he snot rocket onto the Young Bucks. Just both nostrils, so much liquid, and even talking about it is making me feel like I need to gag a little bit. It's sick. Watch it. So Kevin and El Generico, I think, are a deadly combination. They're both incredibly versatile wrestlers capable of different styles. So to me, combined, it feels like they're actually 4 different wrestlers in a duo. And of course, as we've mentioned before, the Young Bucks are maybe the best tag team ever in existence. And so
certainly
they
at
always,
this stretch of time.
100%. So even though this match was 2009, they're still incredibly impressive.
So we get to the closing section of the match, and they set up for their finisher. They put Kevin on their back, and then they do this like weird wheelbarrow cartwheel thing where they just plant him, and then he lands, and then they both hop up and take turns doing moonsaults. So it's just this crazy tumble, lays him down, and then one's hitting a moonsault while one's hitting the moonsault. The other one is setting up to do another moonsault, and then they both double pin Kevin Steen, and you're just like, well, surely there's that. And apparently at this stretch of time, nobody had really ever kicked out of that. And so it's like 1, 2, and then Kevin Steen kicks out, and everyone's like, holy shit. Like he was able to kick out of this finisher that no one's been able to kick out of up until this point. And you're like, okay, maybe Steen and Generico, maybe like Kevin's injured, but maybe he's going to be able to work his way back up. Maybe they're finally going to be able to get that tag team title shot, and they could become champions again. And right when they do it, it's called a super kick party, where basically the Young Bucks will take turns super kicking their opponent over and over again. So they are just chopping Kevin Steen down, and they like kick him all the way down until he's on his knees. And right when he looks up, they both at the same time double kick him in the face, pin him, 1, 2, 3. And then it's the end of the match, and everyone is like so bummed, and you can just feel,
So people now they seem like they're really tired of super kicks. How do you feel about super kicks?
I love them. And I also think the Young Bucks doing this is absolutely what started the trend of everybody doing a super kick. And so everybody being upset about the abundance of super kicks in modern wrestling, it's 100% because of the Young Bucks. But it's one of those things. When they do it, it's cool. What can I say? I like it.
I think it's really fun. I think the
way they structured their super kicks, to me, feels different, and in this match specifically, it felt really purposeful. So after that, it's like it's a devastating loss, and you can feel Kevin. He gets up. He's bleeding from the mouth, and he's stumbling. His leg is hurt still. He gets the microphone, and he basically starts cutting what sounded to me like a retirement speech where he's basically like right when he first starts, there's some heckler in the audience and he has to immediately deal with it. And then he is able to bridge that over into like, even though these guys like fucking hate me, the fact that you the fans have given me your energy and your emotion over all these years, like I really appreciate that. I know I'm hurt. I know I don't look like how a wrestler is traditionally supposed to look, but I've like put it on the line for you guys every single night. And I just want to say, like, I am so grateful to everybody who's ever given me an opportunity in this business. Like, I'm so grateful to, like, he starts naming promotions. He starts naming specific people. And then he's like, and the best company in the world, ROH. I'm so proud that they gave me this shot. And then he like starts pointing out like specific people around the ring who have been behind the scenes and he's just shouting them out by name. And the crowd, you could start chanting like, please don't leave, because it really feels like he's gearing up to be like, this is the end of the road for me. And I was like so proud that I was able to give it all to you. He's just like building, and everybody, like, the emotions are so high. And then he like finally looks across the ring at El Generico, who's like gotten up, and he's like, and I just wanted to say to you, last but not least, and his voice starts to quiver and breaks. And then El Generico like scoops him up and gives him a hug. And these two guys legitimately start weeping in the middle of the ring, and it's like really sad, and they're like holding each other, and they're crying, and it's like a couple of seconds, and then he peels off, and then Kevin Owens goes, I hate your fucking guts, and then he just low blows El Generico and rolls out of the ring over to commentary and grabs a chair.
This chair hit gave me a fucking concussion. So Kevin just stands right in front of El Generico, and he's doubled over from the low blow. And Kevin hits him so hard on the head. There's no way it was safe. And I feel like I was concussed in that moment too.
I was going to ask you, Samee, so in modern wrestling, unprotected chair shots to the head are a real no-no.
Yeah.
But back in the 2010s, people were doing that shit all the time. And so how jarring does it feel to go back into wrestling history and just watch these unbelievable. Kevin Steen winds up like he's swinging a baseball bat. He really gets leverage, and it's just no mistaking it, no faking it. He just hits El Generico. He pastes him with that chair.
I hate it. I hated seeing it. It didn't make me feel good. It made me feel sick, much like his snot rockets. They really lay into each other in a way that I really wasn't expecting in the year 2009. But yeah, I'm going to think about that chair shot for a while. It really rattled me.
It's one of those things, like a mutual friend, an ally, a wrestler named Colt Cabana. He comes out to kind of break things up and really like get some distance, and damage is done. El Generico's just in the ring. He's dazed. He doesn't know what to do. And then Kevin Steen gets to think. So this is one of those things where I just want to highlight here. Kevin Steen, incredible wrestler. Kevin Steen, incredible on the mic. And so he really threaded this unbelievable promo where he really played with your emotions, where you're like, I think Kevin Steen's retiring. This is so sad.
Right. That's
I love him. I think sure, he's a little bit of a curmudgeon, but he's great in the ring. And then, so it just in the middle of really making you feel bad and feel for him when you're at your most vulnerable, he betrays his best friend in the entire world. What a psycho.
It's brutal, dude. Kevin Owens is a fucking madman, mad scientist for sure.
He has cut some of my absolute favorite promos in the world. We'll get into them in subsequent episodes, but it's incredible. But when he gets to the top of the ring, he blows a kiss, and that's that. And so after this happens, Kevin Steen, I think, really picks up an incredible mean streak. You thought he was mean when he was on a team with El Generico, but I really feel like when whatever tidying up El Generico was doing, whatever lid he was keeping on Kevin Steen, lids off. Kevin Steen is an absolute maniac. He starts hanging out with this wrestler named Steve Corino, who kind of takes credit for helping open Kevin Steen's eyes to why he needed to drop the dead weight that was El Generico. And he's like, I see that this guy could be a world champion. And so he warns Generico, he warns Colt Cabana, this doesn't have anything to do with you, stay away. And El Generico, I think, doesn't want to have anything to do with this. He's heartbroken. He goes into seclusion. He's not seen. And I guess, Samee, what I wanted to ask you, romantic or otherwise, when it comes to breakups, would you say, are you more of a Kevin Steen, the kind of person who attacks the world immediately and debuts a newer, more violent persona? Or are you more of an El Generico type who goes into seclusion and must heal, and then only when pushed finds their new violent persona?
I think as a surprise to nobody, I'm a Kevin Steen.
I'm absolutely an El Generico. One thing about me and El Generico, we're going to mope for like 5 months straight. And that's exactly what El Generico does.
So you're out there moping. Me and Kevin are just destroying,
linking up with Steve Corino immediately and being like,
actually everything, falling into the wrong crowd. Yeah.
Falling into the wrong crowd. And then I think most damning of all, Kevin Steen and Steve Corino start setting their sights on Colt Cabana for helping El Generico. And so it's only once they start attacking Colt Cabana that El Generico feels compelled to get back in there and defend Colt Cabana, who didn't have anything to do with anything. Like, all Colt Cabana did was care about El Generico. And so I think Generico like comes out, but then Kevin Steen steps to him, and you can tell that El Generico doesn't want to fight Kevin Steen at all. He's still heartbroken by all of this. And that becomes an interesting dynamic where the early part of this feud is like a tag team situation where it's El Generico and Colt Cabana versus Steve Corino and Kevin Steen. But El Generico has this real reluctance to try to hurt Kevin Steen at all. And it makes it honestly pretty difficult. So in their first match, they're able to win, but it's like El Generico is like really not getting involved. And so it takes so that happens April 3rd, 2010 at ROH The Big Bang. The tension slowly starts to bubble over after this like first tag match. And then it gets to the point where June 19th, 2010, Death Before Dishonor 8, we're going to have the very first Kevin Steen versus El Generico match. And Generico demands that this match happen first at the very beginning. Like, no waiting around. As soon as the event starts, wants to fight Kevin Steen. They do it. Kevin Steen picks up the first victory. And then they run it back 1 month later at ROH Hate Chapter 2. Incredible name for it. Incredible name for an event. They run it back. And I think this is where the intensity and the rivalry really starts to ratchet up. And you can really kind of see that Kevin Steen has fully lost it. He is just fully sadistic. Generico is finally getting on board with just the concept of fighting Steen and is able to meet him on his level. And he's going for one of his signature moves, where he dives. So they're both on the outside of the ring, and then El Generico will dive through the first rope. So he'll dive like 5 feet in the air, travel through the first ring rope, hook his opponent, and then hit them with a DDT. But here's the thing. Kevin Steen knows that El Generico has this in his arsenal. So when El Generico is loading this up, Kevin Steen blatantly breaks the honor code, reaches under the ring, grabs a chair, and right as El Generico is flying through, he just chest passes a chair directly into directly into Generico's face. And so Generico technically wins Hate Chapter 2, their encounter at Hate Chapter 2, but at what cost? Because then Kevin Steen gets a chain, and he's so mad, he starts choking everybody. He starts choking the referee with a chain. And like things have just gone like fully nuts. But then like you can see that something kind of starts to snap in El Generico. And then they start just fighting outside of the ring. And it gets to the point where El Generico puts Kevin Steen on a table and then jumps off some fucking scaffolding to put him through the table.
Oh my God.
So by the time we get to September, there's another event called Glory by Honor 9. And this is where Colt Cabana and El Generico run it back with Steve Corino and Kevin Steen in a match called a double chain match. Samee, do you know what a double chain match is?
It's when two wrestlers wear two chains and they wrestle cleanly and not ultra violently at all, probably.
Unfortunately, only the first part's right.
Shucks.
So a double chain match is a stipulation match, like we've talked about before, where there's a special kind of match, like chain matches, dog collar matches, leather strap matches. Basically, you're wrestling a match, but you are tied to your opponent in some way. And so in this particular instance, It is a tag team match where each member of the tag team is chained to their opponent. So El Generico is chained to Kevin Steen, and then Steve Corino is chained to Colt Cabana, and then they just have a wrestling match while everybody's all chained together. And dude, if you got the time, I highly recommend you go back and check out Glory by Honor 9 for the double chain match, because these dudes get so fucking violent with each other. It's so crazy. There's so much blood. And at points, they're like getting the chains off of each other. So like at one point, like they get their chains off, and then both Kevin Steen and Steve Corino chain themselves to Colt Cabana and are just
Oh my
like
God.
dragging him all around the ring. And then El Generico, he's got the chains off, so he's just going extra nuts too. When I first started looking into Ring of Honor, and you look at stuff like the honor code, you look at stuff like you got it. Hey, look, if you don't shake hands at the beginning of the match, what are we even doing? You just sort of expect them to not go to the violent depths that this feud goes to, where it's like, I cannot tell you how much blood gets involved. It is so unbelievably almost stomach churn. It is truly, it's like a level of blood that we've seen only in the most ultra violent matches we've checked out. But the reason I wanted to bring this up, because something pretty diabolical happens here. So Samee, you have a passing interest in luchadors, lucha history.
Yeah.
What is one of the most disrespectful things a villain can do to a masked luchador?
Take that mask off.
Take that mask off. And that is exactly what Kevin Steen does. The end of this match, Kevin Steen rips El Generico's mask off of his face, and it's just like the ultimate disrespect. And then that moves things towards December 18th, 2010. Final battle. This is an unsanctioned fight without honor. And the stipulation is, it is El Generico's mask versus Kevin Steen's career. So if El Generico loses, he has to take off his mask, his identity. And if Kevin Steen loses, he loses his career. He's not allowed to wrestle for ROH ever again. And I guess I just wanted to, before we get into it, the fight without honor is a special kind of match that exists in ROH, a final way to decide when a feud has gotten too violent. It's like a way to end it. A fight without honor basically means that in this type of match, opponents are not required to follow the honor code. And Samee, what is the honor code from the beginning of the episode?
You must shake hands before and after every match. There is no outside interference, no sneak attacks, no harming the officials, and any action resulting in a disqualification violates the code of honor.
All of that's out the window for a fight without honor. And then in addition, there's no disqualifications. There's no countouts, meaning weapons are totally cool to use. And the match will go on until there is a decisive winner.
They really start off immediately breaking the code of honor. So before the match starts, Kevin reaches his hand out, and instead of shaking his hand, El Generico spits right into his face, and Kevin spits back. There's so much spit in this storyline, and I don't love it at all. So it takes El Generico less than 2 minutes to go under the ring and get a chain to whip Kevin with. Because he's on fire.
And it's like he gets the chain harkening back to the double chain match that they just had. And he starts trying to kill Kevin Steen with this chain.
Yeah, he wraps his hand with the chain and starts, it looks like he's punching him so hard that he's trying to punch Kevin's teeth out of his mouth. After this, Kevin's already bleeding and his blood faucet is really turned on after Generico throws a table onto Kevin's forehead. And one of the announcers is like, if you don't like violence, stop watching right now, which I felt was a warning that came a little too late.
Samee is not exaggerating. Once they go under the ring, which is approximately 2 minutes into the match, I would say every 30 seconds to a minute, they are getting a new weapon involved, like a new chair, a new table, a ladder, like chains, all kinds of stuff. And it is just, I personally, I don't know if you felt this way. Like we've watched a lot of culminations of feuds, a lot of grudge matches, right? And this is for all the marbles. This is a mask versus career match, right? To end a blood feud between two best friends, tag team partners turned bitter enemies. I don't know how you felt, but me personally, I feel like I haven't seen a match quite like this. Like the anger and the passion just felt off the charts for me personally. How did you feel watching it?
Yeah, I feel like, we kind of throw the phrase blood feud around willy-nilly. And after watching this match, this was literally a blood feud. Both of these guys spilled so much blood that I am surprised that they even wrestled as long as they did in this match, and then also wrestled as long as they did career-wise. It is just so brutal.
And I think just from a performance standpoint too, the passion and the anger is just hard pressed to find a match where I felt that passion
Yeah,
emanate from the screen like I did watching this. And when Sammy says they're bleeding, they are like faucets on their heads, just blah 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 blah. And here's the
yeah.
thing, I know what you're thinking. El Generico, he's wearing a mask. You can't see him bleed. Well,
Uh-huh.
here's the thing. Kevin Steen thought of that. And so he towers over Generico at a certain point and just grabs from the eye holes and just starts ripping
Rips.
Generico's mask to the point where there's like a pretty big hole where you can see, and then hits him. He starts bleeding. And so then there's just like he's wearing the mask with like one extra eye, but the eye is just pouring blood. And then it
Yeah.
cuts back to Kevin Steen, and he's just got his very 2010 gelled hair, but then it's just like faucet, blood, 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 blood.
Dude, there's a shot after one point where it's close up on Kevin, and it's, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the way through the match, and some of his blood is dried, and he's stopped pouring blood from his forehead, and it looks so menacing and scary. Just it's like because it was fucking wild. After El Generico uses a ladder as a battering ram against Kevin, Kevin finally gathers up some steam and power bombs El Generico onto the ring apron. Didn't think El Generico would ever walk again after seeing this. And so Kevin starts covering El Generico in the barricade covers, which are super thin metal sheets, and he frog splashes El Generico while he's still under those sheets in a kind of tucking him into a gentle bed of violence. So Kevin flips El Generico onto a ladder in a spot that took my breath away because he bends the legs of the ladder, and we've mentioned this so many times. We are very intimately familiar with ladders. To bend a ladder leg, it takes a lot of force. And so the fact that El Generico's body bent both of these legs inward was just so startling. Like, these guys are really, really going at it. And while El Generico is on the ground, writhing in agony, Kevin just goes over and starts smearing his own blood onto El Generico's back. I think he writes something, but it's unclear what he wrote.
I was gonna say there's some blood play in
It's like
this match. So
ritualistic blood play.
that's a thing too. When we were talking about Kevin Steen being a villain, a menace, a psycho, like he is straight up gets El Generico's blood. He drinks the blood. He puts the
Mhm.
blood on his hands. He kind of washes it around. He washes his face with his opponent's blood in a way that's just
Drop that skincare routine.
I demonic. Is the first word that comes to mind of just truly. This is some heinous, diabolical, evil shit that Kevin Steen is doing to his former
Yeah.
best friend. That's so
Yeah, just don't get on Kevin's bad side, that's all.
This is a hypothetical question.
Sure.
Let's say we had a falling out, and then
Mhm.
the falling out led to us having a wrestling match where I was so mad at you, I bathed in your blood a little bit.
Mhm.
Is there a world in which we could work it out and be friends later? Or is that kind of
At a
like,
different company.
yeah, I guess it's just like, hey, dude, I know I just like ripped your mask and literally bathed in your blood right in front of you, but like, I've really grown a lot. Could you ever trust somebody again? Could you ever trust somebody again when they've literally bathed in your blood?
Here's the thing. If we were actually fighting and it was like an equal fight. What I'm talking about is like I got in some offense on you, like we went at it.
Yeah.
Then I think it would be fine. But if I was
You're
just like sitting
yeah, look, I power
innocently,
bombed you. You bathed in my blood.
yeah, I don't know. I think it would be fine.
I think that's wild because that's one of those things I would bring it up a lot. I would be like, hey, maybe we work it out, but if ever I'm annoyed, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I guess, but I mean, hey, by the way, do you remember that time you bathed in my blood? What?
Yeah, I mean,
I would
it
bring
would
that up
be
forever if you did that to me, Samee. I would still be your friend, but I'd bring it up a lot.
okay. That's fair. Yeah, I feel like you know what? I'm just always gonna forgive you, Michael.
You're a forgive and forget kind of person, whereas I'm like a forgive and constantly bring it up. Whatever that is, that's what I am.
You're a forgive and nobody gets to forget.
Yeah, forgive and everyone will know forever.
Well, Kevin and El Generico do a lot of unforgivable stuff to each other, including when Kevin brings out plastic folding chairs and cannonballs one into El Generico. So at this point, El Generico is just a shell of a man, and Kevin knows this and starts ripping at his mask, as Michael mentioned earlier. And to add insult to 1,000 injuries, Kevin brings out the mask that he ripped off of El Generico previously and shoves it up into his shorts. And then Kevin licks up some of El Generico's blood. What the fuck is this guy on right now? I feel like he's doing everything that, like, you know, those reports of people on bath salts did in the mid 2000s.
Yes.
He's 100% on bath salts right now.
Kevin Steen has dipped into his bath salt bag of tricks
He's in
to
his
really
bath salts era back here.
was really like, what if it's just like, I have to fight my best friend, but I don't know if I could do it. Let me just do some bath salts real quick.
Fucking nuts.
And he's like,
nuts.
I'm gonna eat El Generico. I'm gonna kill him. And so Samee,
yeah.
Here's what I would love to ask you. Here's another hypothetical for you.
Let's go.
What do you think is worse?
Mm.
If I were to beat you up and bathe in your blood,
Okay.
or if I were to take your lucha mask, your identity, and straight up put it in my pants and like wipe my junk with it. Which one would piss you off more?
Junk mask.
Junk mask? Really?
Yeah.
All right. Because I also feel like, so here with me, it would be one of those things where it's like, okay, after probably a decade of me bringing up the fact that you bathed in my blood, I would also be like, oh, and didn't you wipe your butt with my mask?
So the drinking of the blood would take precedence over the junk mask.
Yeah, I think if a friend turned enemy drank my blood, that I personally, that one pushes my buttons more than not my lucha mask.
I just feel like there's just some kind of like ritualistic aspect of the blood drinking that I kind of appreciate. It's kind of like, you know, hunters out in the wild will drink the blood of the fallen animal in a kind of a respect thing. Like, oh, I'm taking your essence. Like, this is like a symbol of like, we are together now. And so there is a little bit of the ritualistic aspect of that.
Is that what you think Kevin Steen did to El Generico? He went like, that's not respect. That's truly, Samee?
Yeah.
That's what Hannibal Lecter would do. Kevin
He's
Steen is Hannibal Lectering El Generico, who is just fighting for his fucking life.
He's literally fighting for his life. Oh, man. At this point, it's been about 8 straight minutes of Kevin just clobbering El Generico. But El Generico finally answers with a huge drop of Kevin onto a folded ladder. So just the narrow part of it. Again, I'm so worried about their spines during this match. And after another huge spot into a ladder, El Generico tries to pin Kevin. And I thought that this part was interesting because during that whole massive 8-minute long destruction of El Generico, not once did we see Kevin try to end the match. But after this El Generico, first spot that he could try to end this, he tries to, which I think is like, number one, Kevin's fucking scary, and I am really emotional for El Generico.
Yeah, and I think it also that it speaks to the difference in styles. That's what made them such an interesting combination to begin with, where Generico wants to fight honorably. He wants to end this as quickly as possible, where it feels like Kevin Steen, I don't even know what he wants to do. Like, I
He
don't
wants
even
to
like, I
murder
want to
El
say
Generico,
beat him,
I
but it
think.
feels like he wants to do worse. I don't even.
He wants to eat him, I think.
Yeah, I think he wants to do a human. I truly don't know. It gets beyond. Because I think a lot of times when you watch villainous wrestling characters, you're just like, oh, I get it. They want to win. They want to make the person suffer. But it's like that's how erratic and just diabolical Kevin Steen was this entire feud, where I was like, I don't even know if he knows what he would want. I think this is what's really interesting about Kevin Steen, the character. And it's been sort of a lifelong thing where he does have a chip on his shoulder. There is like an anger and there is a jealousy that always seems to be directed at the El Generico character. And so it does feel like there's some element of, I hate you so much because I want to be you, is what it feels like. But it also just feels like we're beyond jealousy. Beating him isn't enough. Killing him isn't enough. Butchering him isn't enough. None of it is good enough. He just wants it, make it so that like he Thanos snaps and El Generico disappears and never existed. Would that be good enough for Kevin Steen? I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah, he's just wrestling with such violence that, yeah, it is incredibly unclear if he wants to just win a match or obliterate his former friend.
Which I think also, to me, added to the energy that I felt while I was watching this match, because I think a lot of times, right, you can understand the predictable characters, the predictable situations of wrestlers, but Kevin Owens is wrestling with this point of view that I personally have never really seen before. Because even when characters are wrestling out of control, you still kind of know what they want. But I think with Kevin Steen, at certain points in this match, I was like, we've lost the plot, dude. This guy's a psychopath. I don't even know what he wants anymore. And it's really freaking me out in a good way, where you're just like, I know this is all part of the show, but it really feels like we're so far on the margins of what's in control anymore. And it is really just like, we're just watching this unbelievable, like a performance I have rarely seen, where it's like, I'm hard pressed to find another example of a time where I was like, oh, this dude is so into this character in this situation right now that this just the intensity feels real, even though obviously these guys are best friends.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just like, in storyline or just like in the story of Kevin Steen, that all of this no honor, no holds barred, like violence is a result and just like built up energy and animosity from hanging with his former teacher, forcing him into this regimented box. And so it all just like built, like maybe Kevin was already a violent being, but then he was like violently shoved into a very tiny box. And then he finally gets a match that is literally, get outside of your box, dog. And he just takes all of that stuff and lays into El Generico with reckless abandon.
I don't know. I'm making it sound like this match is just pure carnage, and it's like absolutely incredibly hyper violent. But it is one of those things where I just found it so exciting to watch, because it truly felt like, I think so rarely in wrestling, I don't know if you feel this way, Samee, but I feel like so rarely in wrestling, you see somebody tap into a character or a motivation or a situation that gets outside of the usual tropes of wrestling. And so obviously the betraying your tag team partner, turning on them because you're jealous and you hate them, we've seen that trope 1,000 times. And that's like a really classic vein to mine for wrestling. But I just feel like the intensity that Kevin Owens brings to it was a performance I've never seen before. I'm really hard pressed to find somebody who tapped into that specific moment to the point where it was like it was just an energy I've never seen before, and it was so fascinating to watch. And it really just like added this unpredictable quality to this match where I was like, oh yeah, this feels like we're off the rails, even though I know we're not. It feels like we're out of control, even though I know that we're not. But it's all just in there, and it's like that's the intensity that Kevin Steen is bringing to this. It's incredible to watch.
Speaking of unpredictable, Kevin starts setting up a contraption that I think is a result of losing so much blood throughout the match. So there's a ladder that's stretched across the ring ropes and a barricade. And then we see Kevin trying to set up a table on top of the ladder, which I don't know if it looks any sort of stable enough for me to believe that it's gonna be this like huge monstrous spot. How did you feel about this ladder on top of a table on top of a ladder situation?
I was stoked. I personally, here's the thing. It taps into me growing up. They had those triple threat TLC matches between the Dudley Boys, the Hardy Boys, and Edge and Christian. And they would just set up 2 tables and then 2 tables on top. And then they would fall through a ladder through all of the tables. So anytime wrestlers build huge violent contraptions out of chairs and ladders, I'm always just like, hey gang, let's see what let's get creative. Let's see what we come up with. Me personally, I was like, I hope this works because this looks cool to me. But yeah, you look at the foundation of the ladder, you look at how beat up that table is, you're just like, not a lot. Even if this goes well, it's going to be bad. So it can only get worse from here.
And it doesn't go as planned right away for Kevin. So El Generico dives through the contraption, and after he dives through it, the security that's surrounding the ring feels like they have to clear out the audience from that area just
because
the
audience is so into it that they're holding the. That's what I love about wrestling fans at live events, where a lot of times they know what's up. And so they're like, oh, they're setting up a table. Let me just like really help him get it into position and like hold it steady. And so they were like holding the ladder. They were holding the table. And I think security was just like, these dudes are about to go through this table. Get the fuck out of here. Like, what are you
Don't
doing?
You know wrestling, you guys? You can't hold on to this.
And then, yeah, like us wrestling fans are just right up close being like, we got you guys, go for it. And just like, no, you're a maniac too. You're all crazy.
It's so funny. So El Generico is the one that ends up putting Kevin through his table ladder contraption. And should this be what we do once we get 1,000 followers on YouTube?
I trust your knees enough to be able to do this.
Great, fantastic. I trust your back enough for I don't even know what I was gonna say.
Yeah, if your knees can flip me, my back can support us.
After the table ladder spot, it looks like El Generico has battered Kevin enough to pin him, but Steve Corino comes in and interferes, but Colt Cabana is hot on his heels. So they run into the ring and they run each other right out of the arena. And somehow 2 refs get injured, one of which breaks a table further. A third ref sprints in after Kevin package pile drivers El Generico onto a plastic chair. He kicks out and Kevin is fucking confused and pissed.
He's so pissed, he package pile drives the fucking referee.
This is insane. So like literally they're just neatly checking off every single honor code, which I thought was really funny.
In that way where I was just like, oh, they've really orchestrated this monstrous chaos to the point where he hits the package pile driver on El Generico, 1-2, kick out. And then you just see Kevin Steen just look at the referee and then do a beautiful package pile driver on the referee. And you're just like, what?
Like it is.
My jaw was on the ground. It was just one of those things where you just don't think that kind of thing can happen. And then when you see it happen, you're like,
what the fuck?
He just pile driver the referee. He didn't like push him. He didn't kick him or anything. He like did a pile driver on the referee.
Whenever a wrestler does like a full ass move on a referee, it kind of gives me the same feeling of hearing a child cuss out their parents or something. It's like, yeah. You're not allowed to do that.
I know exactly what you mean, where it breaks one of those societal rules where you're just like, you can't It's like, sure, ref bumps are fine, accidentally hitting them, accidentally doing whatever. But anytime you've ever just seen somebody just fully be like, I'm going to pile drive this guy, actually, you're like,
like, holy shit, dude, no way.
I never. Yeah, I truly. This was truly my reaction when Kevin Steen did a package pile driver and the referee was like, I cannot in all my days.
Oh, man. And Kevin also, we talked about how he's a little bit chatty in the ring, and he's just shouting at the top of his lungs and threatening El Generico with actual, for real death. And it's not, it's really, really startling, but it is kind of
Based
funny.
on how this match has gone, not outside the realm of possibility at this point.
Not at all. But it is kind of funny that, like, we've watched matches where, and they're always barbed wire matches, where I can feel myself, like, shutting down and feeling that I have I have, like, my big toe is over the line, and I understand that there's a boundary, but even though this stuff is so violent, they somehow don't get me to that point where I feel uneasy or unsafe, which is really interesting, and I'm just thinking about that right now.
What I honestly think it is you can tell that as much as this is orchestrated chaos, as much as it feels like they're not in control, that's how professional these guys are. You just know that these guys are so good and so professional that even though this feels out of control, even though I can't see the seams like I normally do when I'm watching a wrestling match, I trust these performers. And I think that's what it is, where it's like, even though what they're doing is completely over the line, I don't know. I feel safe because I trust the performers involved.
So El Generico musters the energy to administer a mean-looking top rope / turnbuckle brain buster, but Kevin still kicks out. El Generico grabs a steel chair and winds up to hit Kevin's head clean off, but he hesitates because Kevin has whipped out the mask he has stored by his balls.
And I think also there's like, he's just cowering. He can. I
Yeah.
think it's the first time we're able to see underneath whatever mask Kevin Steen has created for himself, where it's like, I think this is just, underneath this psychotic, unpredictable, violent menace that we've been seeing for like a year at this point, underneath it all is like a he's scared. He doesn't want to do it. And it's like, he really plays that thing. And we saw it at WrestleMania 40, which we went to live. When when Jay was going to kick Jimmy, he had that moment, and I don't think that beat quite worked for people, but it was just, that's what makes a hero, and that's what makes a villain. You can see El Generico see it all, be like, I know this guy put me through everything. I know he hurt me so much. He betrayed me so much. He ripped off my mask. He's choked me out with metal chains. He's done so much to me. But at the end of the day, like, I'm more honorable than him. Or am I? Because El Generico winds up the chair like a baseball bat and just whacks Kevin Steen in the face.
Yep.
And this feud ends like it starts, with a diabolical chair shot to the head. El Generico pins Kevin Steen 1, 2, 3. End of match. End of feud. El Generico fucking wins.
Fuck,
yikes,
dude. Jesus. Oh, man. Ugh. Fuck.
So moving into the epilogue, I think off of the back of this, El Generico is able to get some momentum. So what it means is he gets to keep his mask, but Kevin Steen is gone from Ring of Honor. So without this shadow, without this cloud looming over El Generico, he is able to become the third ever Ring of Honor television champion. And as for Kevin Steen, so the leaving ROH, that wasn't entirely part of the storyline. There was some behind the scenes disputes going on with management. It kind of gets outside of the storyline and a little bit more into real life, so I don't really want to touch on it. But it wasn't really clear if Kevin Steen would appear in Ring of Honor again. But I think luckily they're able to come to an agreement, and they're able to take this kind of real life behind the scenes controversy and weave it into a storyline where Kevin Steen creates a group called Scum, and they take on Ring of Honor itself. And then through that whole through that whole storyline, he is able to capture the Ring of Honor heavyweight champion. He becomes the top champion in the company. And at this point, these guys have been making so many waves, getting so much attention that they capture the attention of WWE, the biggest wrestling promotion around. And they want these guys to join their developmental promotion, NXT. Before they leave, they run it back one more time, December 16th, 2012, final battle, Doomsday, where they engage in a match called Ladder War for the Ring of Honor World Championship. But Samee, that's a story for a different day. So, Samee, that was the Kevin Steen versus El Generico feud. Final thoughts. What were your big takeaways from the? What were your big takeaways?
My final takeaway is that only your best friend can hurt you as this bad. ...
I agree. I think for me, when I became aware of Kevin Steen and El Generico in NXT, in WWE main roster, they were already Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. They had rebranded themselves, and they have an amazing feud that I would love to cover. I just didn't know the depth and the history of the literal wars these two have fought together. And I knew that they were close, and it was just so nice to be able to dig down a little bit deeper and learn a little bit more, just to really fill in the history. So when they have these iconic clashes, it's just always nice to get a fuller picture with more context to see just how deep and how referential wrestling can be if you let it. Where it's like, oh, what I love about wrestling, there's always the match you're seeing. And since wrestlers are really good and really good historians, they're always referencing stuff from the past. So I think it'll just be really interesting to check out present day wrestling with all this context about Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. I thought it was really cool.
Well, Kevin Owens / Kevin Steen, I don't think his gimmick changed at all. But it is interesting to see what Sami Zayn was up to. And I was reading this article about, they were kind of breaking down the effect of taking El Generico, taking the mask away from Sami Zayn, and how it kind of made Sami Zayn a little bit of a generic wrestler as far as gimmicks go. Like, it took away his like cartoonish ability and his like an extra layer of charisma that he had just being able to be underneath the mask.
It took him a little bit, but I think once he found it, he tapped into that vein. And I, again, for my money, I don't think there is a better. He's in a rare class of some of the greatest baby faces of all time. I truly believe that, and I think it's just so great. And so it was one of those things where I honestly think that the El Generico character got really far for a gimmick that started as a joke. And so I think I sort of agree. And I know that he probably had a lot of trepidation when he first took the mask off, but I do think it's allowed him to go way further than El Generico would have ever been able to, I personally think.
Thank you for listening to Wrestling Academy, hosted, produced, edited by Michael Classic and Samee Junio. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Wrestling Academy Pod. Send us an email at wrestlingacademypod@gmail.com.
And if you could follow, rate, and leave us a positive review wherever you get your podcasts, but check us out on Spotify, where we have Q&As and polls for every episode. And please, if you have any information on Ween Kid, go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, and send us an anonymous tip, or you can call the Ween Kid tip line and leave us a voicemail. That number is 708-669-4512. Again, that number is 708-669-4512. This is the updated Ween Kid. This is who we're looking for. We need your clue. I've done my part. I need your clues now.
Glasses is me!